Star Wars has been attached to the Disney brand since arguably 1987 when Star Tours debuted at Disneyland. In 2012, Disney acquired Star Wars. But before 2012 and even before 1987, there was a new sci-fi endeavor at Disneyland. The band known as Halyx arrived at Disneyland in the summer of 1981, and today we will be discussing them. Now, I understand that the topic of Halyx has been discussed to great lengths and in much better ways than I can really do that because of Defunctland's documentary titled Live from the Space Stage, A Halyx Story. Now, in preparation for this video, I watched the documentary, and I'll be linking that down below and promoting it quite a bit throughout this video. I wanted to talk about Halyx though because I had heard about it a long time ago on a podcast known as Podcast The Ride, and I had seen always the thumbnail of that documentary, and I wanted to, just spread what this thing is here on my channel. So I ended up watching the documentary, and I'll be linking that below. But I wanted to make like a almost Cliff Notes version, just discussing what this band was and why it's so fascinating to me. So let's begin. Honestly, before we can even get into the band of Halyx, we're going to need a little bit of context. In 1977, George Lucas released Star Wars, and this was, of course, a groundbreaking film. In 1980, George followed Star Wars up with The Empire Strikes Back. As Star Wars emerged, everyone would want to replicate its success in some capacity. Disney actually tried to create some films that would cash in on the whole sci-fi phenomenon with their films such as The Black Hole in 1979 and of course Tron later in 1982. In the meantime, Disney debuted a band that was meant to boost their record company and to somewhat emulate sci-fi craze of the times, and even actually tap into the entire rock and roll scene. And the band Halyx was created in the response to Star Wars and rock and roll, all the while actually trying to help save Disney's record company. If you didn't know, Disney had a record company, but there were not huge hits there. Mary Poppins and Davy Crockett were notable hits for the company, but Disney then started to pump out these storybook records, which were decent hits, but nothing major. The storybook records, of course, would have a whole-on cast narrating a story, mostly like the plot of a film, and incredible sound design. So essentially, it was like a radio drama for films and cartoons that Disney had already made, and they called them the storybook records. And they were hits, they were successful, but they weren't the biggest thing in the world. In July of 1979, the record company put out Mickey Mouse Disco. At first, the album wasn't a big hit, and then animators at Disney actually worked on animated promotions and some commercials. And in the Halyx documentary I watched, they said that this was actually what really boosted this album to new heights. The album became a critical hit and brought a lot of attention to Disney Records. Now, Disney Records was searching for the next big thing, and that would be when Halyx showed up. Mike Post backed Halyx and helped it be created. It was almost like his whole idea. Mike Post is the Grammy and Emmy-winning musician behind iconic TV show themes such as Magnum P.I., Law & Order, and Hill Street Blues. Halyx not only piggybacked off of the success of Star Wars, but it served as a way for Disney to create their own original band that would actually help to save their record company. Sure, Disco Mickey was a huge hit, but once you have a big hit like that based off your main character and you're trying to, build out a record company, you kind of are left with the whole, where do we even go from here? And really what they needed was a band or an artist to be the staple of their record company. Halyx was formed and would perform at Disneyland on the Space Mountain stage.
Disneyland. This summer, it's hot. And now, just one ticket gets it all day and all night. Unlimited attractions, unlimited rock, rhythm, and action. More than you've ever seen before. This summer, Disneyland, the hottest ticket in town. And it's unlimited.
The band was a rock band, which was fitting for the times as rock and roll was the biggest and most popular genre at that time. The band was trying to do something similar to Kiss with a Star Wars sound mix in, and of course with the costumes looking like they walked out of the Star Wars universe. Now, as for the design of the band's aesthetics, it was all inspired by Star Wars. The band manager and the creators wanted this to be a very unique looking band that would just be so strange and something that people would kind of like, walk by in the park and they'd be like, what the heck is this? Especially since, Star Wars was so recognizable. If you were walking through the park and saw a massive Yeti guy, you'd probably stop to, hear what they're singing, and especially if you saw them playing bass or guitar or whatever it may be. Now, as I just kind of discussed, the bass player was actually intentionally created to be a sort of distant cousin of Chewbacca. That was the whole design idea behind it, and, make something that looks familiar from the Star Wars universe, but our own spin on it, so I guess we don't get sued or something. Now, the band starred Laura Mumford as the main star and singer of the band, a 7-foot-tall bass player who was a Wookiee creature played by Roger Freeland, a stormtrooper-looking synth player played by Tom Miller, the husband of Laura, an acrobatic percussionist played by Tony Coppola, lead guitarist Bruce Gowdy, drummer Brian Lucas, and Jeanette Klinger as their backup singer. The music that Halyx performed was a mix of original songs and cover songs. The most surprising and probably the most notable song that they ever performed was Jailbait. Now, if you don't know what Jailbait is, you can go and look up the song. In fact, I'll be linking it down below, but let's just say that it is not exactly what Disney would be allowing back then. However, Ron Miller, who I believe married into the Disney family and was the president of Disney at that time, actually let them get away with this and essentially said that, if it becomes too much of a problem, we'll take it off the track list if too many people complain. That was a part in the Halyx documentary, which you guys should go and check out. Now, Halyx as a band honestly pushed Disney to the edge and embraced the culture and spirit of rock and roll, something that at the time Disney wasn't really fond of. Disney back in the day wasn't nearly as inclusive or accepting as they are today. Today, the brand and company likes to position themselves as a very inclusive and accepting community company of really all communities, no matter who or what you really are. And back then, that was definitely not the case. In the 80s and even honestly the 90s, Disney was strict. Disney was strict before the 80s as well, but I mean, it's completely different now than how it used to be. I mean, I was reading up on this and it was even so bad that one of the guys had to actually sign a contract because he had such long hairs and he had such long hair, he had to sign an agreement thingy to say, I'm with the band Halyx, I perform here, you guys gotta let me in, because Disney had grooming policies about men not having super long hair and a lot of other policies there. But I digress. The band members were all professional performers, which was really cool. They were all local LA professional performers, many being in rock bands before Halyx. Now, Disney sought out the professional musicians since the goal was to make a record album with the band and use them as the staple of Disney records. The band had their first show on June 20th, 1981, and it would go on until September 11th, 1981. They played around 100 shows in the summer of 1981 at Disneyland. I read somewhere that it was 5 days a week, so I'm guessing the weekdays they would play every single day, every single night. 100 shows. That's a lot of shows for live performers back to back to back. Now, after the live shows concluded in 1981, the deal between Disney and Warner Music fell through, and the album was actually never recorded. The band members essentially went back to their normal lives and got their own gigs. All of the members, of course, except for one being Laura. Laura sadly passed away in 2011 after she never got a gig and she ended up leaving her husband. In the documentary that I watched, they play into Laura quite a bit and how this really devastated Laura. She kind of built her entire almost persona and personality around this. She wasn't used to the stardom and the fame, and there were fans of this band, usually younger kids, but there was a dedicated fan base of this band. And she never landed anything else really with Disney, nothing really that big. And sadly, she passed away in 2011. The potential of the Halyx band was immense, since the band itself was, had their dedicated fans, and it was just such a unique thing. I mean, they were doing really good. It was a popular show. They had the fans, but Disney's deal with Warner fell through, and it effectively killed the band. Disney decided to not bring Halyx back, and with that decision, they killed the possibility of Disney Records having a unique, sci-fi band. I mean, honestly, imagine if this was the start of a Disney universe full of experimental bands and artists tied to a Disney record label. Because, nowadays the Disney label, or at least the record label, is mostly known for releasing their scores and soundtracks of their iconic films and TV shows, with occasionally bringing in big artists to cover those old songs. They aren't a lot of original endeavors that deviate from the films and the TV they've made. It's mostly, what has Disney made? Okay, we can just release the soundtrack. There's not a whole lot of originality in the music department. And that's all I really have on Halyx. I could have went a lot more in depth, but I kind of decided to not, because I really just want to encourage you guys to go check out the documentary. I kind of want to give like a surface, level overview, but also there isn't a lot of material to work with here. There's really not a whole lot known. I will be linking down a playlist in the description, as well as the documentary, a playlist of all of the Halyx songs that I could find on YouTube. Somebody made like a playlist of the recordings, because I think in like 2008, 2009, somehow somebody out there, or a bunch of people on the internet, dedicated fans, like remastered the recordings and everything. But yeah, this is one of those things that was mentioned on a podcast known as Podcast The Ride. It was brought to life through the documentary by Defunctland, and it's been a popular topic for the past like 6 years or so. And there's new fans of the band, even though they don't perform. And honestly, even though Disney's probably never gonna do something as cool as this ever again. I hope that this video was educational and didn't rip too much off of the documentary. I wanted to be respectful to the documentary and just kind of, I watched it to understand the story of Halyx, and then I did my own research on some articles and such. So I hope that it was good. I think it was different enough from the documentary. The documentary gets actual reviews with people in the band, the crew and everything, and I cannot stress enough how much you guys need to watch that documentary if you enjoy Halyx, because they did a very, very good job. Before you go, I'd actually like to talk to you guys about the rest of the year, because I have now figured out what it will look like on the channel. On Sunday, we're going to start somewhat of a series, I guess you could say, where we're going to be looking into patriotism and I guess Americana represented in theme parks, particularly the theme parks in the United States of America. For the next 6 Sundays, you will be getting videos on Coney Island, the lost and failed Disney American themed theme park, Disney attractions that are heavily tied to Americana and patriotism, and just some American theme park history, because as we all know, it is 250 years of America, and I think this is probably the best time that I can make this sort of content and just kind of put it out. So basically next Sunday in June and the entire month of July, we're going to be having this sort of content. I hope that you guys enjoy it. There will be one Sunday in the next 6 Sundays where we actually continue our story of parks, our series of Parks to Movie series, as we watch the Country Bears Jamboree film, or the Country Bear film, and we're going to judge the film, kind of like what we did with the Mr. Toad one. We'll do the same thing there, same format. I'll watch the movie, give a good review of it. Hopefully it's a good movie. I've heard really bad things, but I'll give a detailed review of the movie, and we'll go over all that. Now, once we reach August, we will be doing 2 more film reviews in our series and 2 just normal theme park videos. And then the beginning of September, we will get into spooky season, which will run from the beginning of September to the end of October. And I'm hoping to do that every single year, that exact structure, beginning of September to the end of October. We will have a few of the parks to movies. We actually have 3, possibly 4 that we'll do. It's looking like just 3 for now that tie into that, but I'm very excited about spooky season. I love the Halloween season, and man, the parks have so much to offer. Not just Disney parks, we're going to try to actually branch out into real haunts, look at what that looks like, the history of haunts, stuff like that, Universal Horror Nights, all that fun stuff. And then in November, we will be returning to just, another normal month of the channel. We'll have a few park movies, but not a whole lot in that series. And then in December, we're just going to have some fun holiday content. We're going to do Christmas content in the parks, and I think that's going to be really fun. Now, I do want to give you guys a small sneak peek. I know it's a decent ways away, but yes, I'm already thinking about 2027 because I am planning a docu-series that needs to be planned this far in advance. I hope to release this docu-series actually weekly starting in March of 2027. I can't reveal all the details on the series, but I will say I've actually talked about this series happening next year on the channel before. I am really interested in discovering and explaining and educating you guys on the history of every single Disney CEO that came after Walt. The good, the bad, and the ugly of every single CEO that came after Walt. I don't even know how many episodes it would have to be, because I feel like with some of the CEOs it would have to be a 2-part series, but I want to make this, a good high level of production, be an educational docu-series. A lot of you guys really loved the story of Disneyland thing that I made, and eventually I will just make a story of Walt. In fact, I might make that first and just make that, I guess, a part of the series, but it would really just be every Disney CEO focusing on the good, the bad, and the ugly as it pertained mostly to the parks and their involvement. We would touch on some other aspects, but that's the big plan for 2027, and I'm announcing it here now, talking about it a little bit more because I am serious about doing it. I'm very excited to do that, and I'm just really excited. I've been really wanting to do this one for a long time, and it's going to be a blast. Oh, also, I would like to add, in August, one of the videos that we will be doing will be on a Wednesday, probably the day after. Hopefully the day after D23, I will be recapping every single D23 thing that happened, mostly at the parks panel, but we might even touch on the films, especially since we'll hopefully get some good stuff. Hopefully we get good stuff at the parks panels, but we'll be doing a D23 recap here. But honestly, guys, let's just focus on the upcoming videos and take it one day at a time, 1 week at a time. I hope that this video was, educational, helpful, useful, entertaining, and I'll see you guys next time.